Hey guys, welcome to the channel. It's me, Colin, Project Constitution. We have a great show for you today. I have two amazing guest hosts with me. We have Stephen Benoon from Israeli News Live. Make sure you guys go follow him on X at Stephen Benoon or on YouTube at Israeli News Live. And then Mitch Snow. You guys all know Mitch Snow. He's with us today. You can follow him on X at Justice for GR8 Nate. Justice for Great Nate at X. So there you go. We got some interesting new developments with our theory. Some new photos have come out of Charlie that kind of help prove our theory with the exploding microphone receiver pack underneath of his shirt. So without further ado, I'll let Steve go ahead and just give you guys just a brief update, a summary of what our theory is, and then we'll get into the new evidence. This will be a short stream because we have time constraints today.
Colin, thank you. And what a pleasure to meet Mitch Snow before coming on here and getting to chat a little bit. So I really look forward to getting to talk to you a lot more, Mitch, here in the future. And very interesting background, I guess. We'll leave it at that right now. But anyway, Colin, as always, we greatly appreciate you, your fight. You're a voice that not many people want to hear right now because you do make waves, and you make waves in a way that help get the record set straight. And I think from what you sent me on this latest information with Charlie Kirk, it's almost like the smoking gun, so to speak. I know that we went from so many different angles of this because it looked to me clearly like an exit wound initially. I had a hard time dealing with that it could be an entry wound. I remember Candace one day making the statement, it is an entry wound, but it's not a 30-06. You guys were right. And I'm like, all right, something's wrong with this, but I'm willing to listen. And then I'm going back to Phil Turney with USS Liberty. And I remember talking to Phil on the phone one day, and he said, Steve, he says, you work with the CIA. You got connections with Mossad. You know these guys. You know what they did with the pager. Look at the microphone. That's, flat out the way Phil Turney put it. And so I'm going back and I'm looking at all that information there. And Colin, Mitch, you already know it yourself. This young man, he just does not sleep, I don't think. Just really relentlessly looking at every angle, every possibility. Then you had on this amazing young man that he thought it was the microphone on his collar. But one thing we were able to eliminate, though, is the fact that how does the microphone on one side jump to the other side and detonate when it just doesn't make sense? And we thought about maybe it was buried in the line itself, because is it theoretically possible? I asked some people that might know. I knew one nuclear scientist that said theoretically, if it's a big enough line, possibly so. But I kept thinking about what Phil said, and then I saw from the side angle view, the fact that when I worked with the government, I was really heavily into imagery. Of course, heavy into not letting people walk very much longer, but it wasn't my job. It was just helping others to create. Well, let me clarify that, because I really don't want people to think that I was a bad guy here, because I don't want to think I'm a good guy either, but I wasn't a bad guy. I knew very well how we stage assassinations. Details, not in the beginning, but as the years went by, I was part of the team that would help stage this, set it up. How's it going to look? How are you going to play it out? So I was looking at everything from that angle. And over the years, I learned to read MRIs and CAT scans, things like that. So when I'm watching video footage, I kind of think more in details of imagery. And then I saw that bulge in his neck. And then I started looking at the triangulation, because his head hadn't even gone forward, but his neck is bulging. The shock wave goes forward. And then I'm looking at all this and I'm like, wait a minute. You look at the trajectory and I'm like, okay, now it's coming down from his waist, and all the sound signatures. And I'm no sound expert at all, but just from my playing around with it, all the sound signatures knew exactly how many feet all the phones were, you know, exactly. And I'm like, wait a minute, then it has to be coming from where Charlie's sitting, not from, you know, there was no consistency of a sound signature from this phone, that phone, that phone, that phone there that could say, okay, the shot was from the right or the left or anything like that. It always would identify the exact space of the people. So it had to be from Charlie.
And the one always, I remember, it said it was close to the tent, because that, like, when we were looking at the guy behind with the trunk lid guy or whatever, that was only possible. We thought that could have been a theory, only because when you did the sound signature, it said it was very close, within a certain amount of feet from that tent.
Yes, and one thing I'm glad about that you got Mitch on here today, because I want to really pick his brain on this idea. I am not a weapons expert. I was a distinguished master of arms. Of course, I never used a weapon for taking someone out, although armed in the event that that fell my lot. By God's grace, it never did. But there are going to be some questions I want to ask Mitch about, especially about the laser, because, you know, we see this, what appears to be an infrared laser reflecting off of the phone there. You can see it being used, but you can never see it from the front. You can only see it from the rear of it and everything. And so we'll go back to that in a little bit, but just kind of bringing this thing all the way forward. Eventually we find out that, you know, Colin, you know, you found where you got the transceiver on his waist there. And I think the way we actually met was believing that we had a bullet in the air was how we met originally. And so we've gone all these different routes here, but now I hope that's not me going off on that. So, but now we have gotten an amazing, going back to the transceiver on his waist, Colin, that you shared with everybody there. And when we did the video there that day, we were really heavily focused on that transceiver as the very possibility of where this possibly some type of peton in there to shoot a projectile. And with that being said, then someone happens to pop on there right while we're doing the video. They send in this imagery there of his hand being scuffed. And then I shifted myself towards, okay, now it's the microphone. And we did the video together about that. It must be the microphone. But now you have more evidence that's bringing us right back to that transceiver pack there. So that's just kind of, in a nutshell overview, is my dyslexic version of events.
And as far as the laser goes, I still think it's in play. I think there would definitely, we know for a fact that there was a high-powered rifle, a supersonic rifle round that was fired. Without a doubt, there was a supersonic rifle that was fired. Now, I don't know whether it shot blanks. I don't know whether it shot at something else besides Charlie. I don't know if it shot at Charlie and missed. I just know it didn't hit Charlie, and there was one fired.
Well, so that would bring me to my question for Mitch. Here'd be the question for Mitch then. And Mitch, in trying to understand, all right, if there is I know that you can have a designated spotter. Let's say if you're using a drone or something like that can pin it, then the drone can pick up the laser signal and do a firing in that type. That's where this really kind of went initially. Allegedly, and I'm just using the AI, so I have to admit it's not like some intelligent part of brain saying I know this, because I don't. But allegedly, there's a possibility that a laser can actually trigger. It could be used as a triggering device for a peton explosive. Is that possible theoretically or no?
I mean,
it doesn't seem logical.
Yeah, I mean, depending on a switch. I mean, a switch, if a laser is hitting a switch on the device, it could set it off, but probably not. I would have to say maybe not likely. And the reason why is the projectile, the more things that you have to put on the projectile, it has to travel with. So you'd be putting on like some type of a cell receiver for the laser that would then trigger the initiation device for the Peton, like a blasting cap, that kind of stuff. With the Peton, like the ideas about if there was something that was a shape charge or Peton or something like that, like you were saying, there's a minimal thickness that you have to have of explosives. Otherwise, they don't detonate, or they only partially do. There's a lot of mishaps that can happen with it. You have to have a certain size frame, typically over the thickness, a little bit thicker than a pencil is what you'd like. And that's if it's just going to be like a tubular charge, like a deck cord and stuff like that. It still has a residue, and that's where I have a little bit of I've been looking at this. I wasn't paying attention in the beginning a whole lot, other than the fact that they said it was a 30-06, and I looked at that wound. I don't even think I looked at the wound. Like, I didn't want to watch, that kind of stuff for a while. But when you look at that wound, I've shot 30-06s since I was, 4 or 5 years old. There's a lot of kick to those things. And yeah, they're built to actually put holes through quite a bit of material. And that's their purpose. You don't want them roaming around the animal, because that will ruin the meat and the whole purpose of hunting. So you want something that will go straight through the heart, straight through a neck, straight through a cranium, and create a clear hole. And you don't want lead left inside the animal. It's a hunting rifle. Unlike with military rifles and tumbling grounds, where they tumble, and then they wander around the body, creating a whole bunch of soft tissue damage. You don't want that with a 30-06. So for them to say it was a 30-06, me and everybody else looked at that and said, well, that's a bunch of BS, because a 30-06 would have gone, straight through them like butter at that distance, that angle. It wouldn't have been a competition at all. So once you eliminate that this was a large caliber 30-06 rifle that caused the bullet to go into his neck to kill him, then you have to start looking at, what did? What's the evidence of what actually caused the injury? And can we replicate that? And when you look at, I think John Bray did a lot of good work on the energy patterns that went through Charlie's shirt. And of course, there was a lot of people that were wondering about Charlie Kirk's necklace, that it flew up, and what caused it to do it.
And we can see with what John Bray released, I don't have it pulled up, unfortunately. I didn't think to pull that up ahead of time, but like I think last week, John Bray, he released a video of the shirt where you can actually see what the mic receiver that we're talking about, or not the mic receiver, but whatever exploded, you can see it moving up the shirt and then back down after the explosion. You could actually see it, and it comes to rest in the shirt, and then it falls out of the shirt when Charlie gets knocked over. So you can actually see all of that.
You have a high pressure trajectory that comes up from under his left pectoral that seems from down towards his waist, and that's the direction that it seems to have knocked the necklace up into the shirt, and that's why the shirt is up over the wound, and then when it comes down, you have the wound. That's like the main energy projectile that seems to be going up, and the excess.
You can see the air right here underneath the shirt sleeve there. You can definitely see it. Yeah.
So a couple of things that are really telling about this to me is, when you have the air coming out of his sleeves, you have the air coming out of his shirt, both front and back, and we know that it's air. We know that it's which way it's traveling because of the hair on the back of his neck, but stands straight up. So we know it's coming upward and out. And at the very same time that you have that on the outside of his body, on the inside of his body, in those frames, you have his neck expanding to almost twice its size. you know, I think it was meant. It probably could have almost decapitated him. Um, that's that's probably why we're not why we're still looking at this, is because
What?
something got botched.
You brought
Yeah.
up a very interesting point, Mitch, and I'm sorry, Colin. Let me just throw this in here real quick. My wife does a lot of work on the 7 Noahide laws on her Substack, especially, and this is what nearly got her killed. Was because of and that's my opinion. I should say I want to stress that because I know she doesn't like the conspiracy side of things too much, but you don't have Israeli Mossad show up at your conference speaking about it until you keep your mouth shut, or something's worse going to happen to you in the Hebrew language, and me not want to believe that it's a real possibility. Point though I want to make here though is that when she saw Charlie get shot and she saw the information, this was long afterwards, she was looking at all the different things as I would cover it with Colin, and how that Charlie was starting to wake up to Zionist things Candace put out, etc. And she said that was a Noahide execution. She said that's meant to show they were trying to decapitate this man, because that is the punishment for violating the 7 Noahide laws. So I just thought that was interesting that you made that comment.
And
Yeah.
I agree with that. And to Mitch's point, I think it was botched. I think that they definitely intended for it to either hit his chest or to decapitate him one way or the other. What I think happened, they did not intend for it to go into his neck. Absolutely not. That screwed up their entire narrative, everything they planned, because they wanted it to look like a gunshot. They were planning on the 30-06 and saying that it would just either blew his head off or just went straight through, whatever. And I actually think the necklace, because we know how the necklace moved or whatever, I think that the necklace is the reason why things got malfunctioned. I think whatever projected upward hit that necklace and got deflected somehow, and that's what caused it to go in the wrong direction. Potentially. I mean, that's something that I've been mulling over.
I think it definitely it got hit by whatever the projectile was before it went into the neck, and it got ping pong balled into his shirt. It broke, and that matches all the kinetics that we can see on the shirt that are happening at that time. What we don't see, like with the and God bless John Bray and all the work he's done, but I do disagree with him on this point, is the microphone that is on Charlie's right pack, basically, and the theory of, it could be a shape charge pet and this that shoots a battery into his neck at that angle. And the problem with that is you're still dealing with a trying to do a projectile. It's going to have a back kick, and there's nothing on the video showing that microphone got kicked backward in the opposite direction at all.
And if it did, the magnet is not strong enough to hold it.
It would have blown up. Yeah, it would have completely blown all over the place. So there was, before looking at anything on his waistline, I wasn't aware that there was until you brought it up. I was thinking that there was possibly some type of pneumatic strap, that the microphone was a casing for a CO2 cartridge or something, that there might have been tubing that looked like a microphone that was strapped up under his shirt somewhere, and that would have had the angle to do all these things. But with what you found, no, this completely changes all that. And what you pointed out, because he had a device that's right in line with the trajectory of everything. We don't have to go looking farther.
Exactly. And as we were saying, the one photo I showed, let me pull it up again. This photo here, you could see that he clearly has something under his shirt attached to his belt.
Well, you can see the wire,
and that is the
Colin, coming right off of it. It's like a lapel mic transceiver is what it is.
yeah, exactly. That's the receiver for the microphone. That's exactly what it is for the Rode wireless microphone. That's the receiver for it. So that is what originally led us down this path. And then what the new thing is we have some new pictures that have come out here, which we'll pull this up. Sorry about the blood, guys, but it's kind of necessary here, unfortunately. You know, I don't show it unless it's necessary, but this is necessary to what we're talking about, so I have to. But and this is, I'm just showing this because this is the larger picture, just so you know where I got it from. But you can't
Can
really
you zoom
see it
in
here
on the
too well.
stomach area?
Yeah, I'm going to.
Okay.
So there you go. So when you zoom in on that picture I just showed you, right, the same spot under his shirt where you could see that bulge where the microphone receiver was, there is a like a burn mark, whether it be, I don't know if it's a rug burn mark or whether it's a actual burn mark.
That's a bruising from impact is what that is.
Or yeah, or it could, exactly. But yeah, so that's right, and it's got two. It has two. You had two different points. There's two different marks there, which as Mitch, I'll let Mitch tell you what he thinks, but that actually looks like it was attached to his belt, and maybe and that's what the.
I'm gonna try and blow this up here.
The marks there.
So yeah, there's a better. There was one of these that was a slightly clearer picture because that blotch there that's right on his belly, you know, just above, it's actually two clear marks, and it looks, you know, initially looking at it, it looks like chafe marks. It looks like it could be chafe, it could be bruising of the device when it fires off. You're going to have you know, the backfire effect in 180 degrees, and it's going to shove that right back down into his waistband. And the belts that they use, the clips, if I remember, I sent you a picture of one there, Colin. I don't know if you have that or not, but the shape of those, they have a little indentation, and then they sort of skip back toward the body, and it's for the clip to actually be able to grip inside the belt. But that little lip on the outside is actually, they tend to be, you know, they're not razor sharp or anything, but if they scrape at a high speed, what you're going to end up with is something that looks like a chafing burn. It's not necessarily, it'll look like a burn. It sort of gets treated that way medically too, but it's basically like the skin got ripped. There is one point I'd like to make about that is that's a huge bloody scene there. And you can tell that there's a lot of blood coming out of the left side of his neck and up around this area, and guys have blood on their arms and whatnot. And somebody might say, well, that is probably just transfer of blood to his waistband. But it's two very distinct, like finger marks almost. And you could possibly say that. However, then you have to try and explain, you know, and I don't mean to make this funny, but yet you'd have to ask, with what part of trauma medicine for a neck wound do these guys start sticking their hands down Charlie Kirk's pants to check his crotch area? You know, it wouldn't make any sense. He's got a neck wound and you're sticking your hands down his pants to make that transfer. It wouldn't make any sense. So I definitely believe that was some type of the device's clip, and it just got pushed back down into his onto his belt snug when it fired off and caused.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I don't have that. Couldn't find the picture that you sent me. But here's another one. This is an older model mic receiver, but it still does the point. You can see the belt clip on it there on the back. And that's basically what we're saying, that mark is made from, is the belt clip that the microphone was on there. So it could either be bruising from the explosion pushing into it, or it could be like rug burn or whatever from it pushing back down into it with such force. But it's definitely. Go ahead, Steve.
Have you noticed, guys, both of you there, when I zoomed in on the photograph itself, besides where the receiver is, like even to the far side of his stomach there, it's like whether it's a tremendous amount of bruising or if it's blood or whatever, I mean, it could be a shadow. Could be a shadow in there as well, but hard to tell.
Yeah, I didn't
notice that.
I did not look at that. I didn't see it bigger like this. Is the first time I've actually looked at this photo large like this. Okay. And you're right. There that does appear to be like a bruising around that mark.
Right, and of course, like Mitch was bringing out too, is like all over his stomach area is like almost like smearing of blood or something on there, so regardless, it's just it seems to 100%. Now that we have that there, now when we go back and we look at the picture where the person sends us from the camera shot from behind Colin, and we saw the scars on his hand, so I guess it's just blast going out from right up underneath his shirt there that hit his hand. Have you seen that?
Really quick, I'd like to make the point there that with that shot, because again, that I think somebody timed it. We're talking within a minute they're having him into the vehicle, right? It's something like 30 seconds or so. You're not going to get, I mean, some bruising can occur in that time, I guess. But we know that there was a device there. We got the picture of it beforehand. But in this picture, where's the device? I don't see it anymore. Where'd it go?
That's a famous thought that came up to my mind at the beginning of the program, that and I never really looked into this. I think Colin, you did, where they're passing something off right there. When the guy jumps over the table, they grab something, they pass it off to the other. Could that have been what they were passing off, was the fragmentation of this device, the transceiver that was on his waist? I mean, I don't know if that was ever determined what was passed off.
Well, I mean, if there was anything left, because the black shards were not only in the SUV, but they were actually, I don't have the picture, but I know Barron has shown them before, but there were black shards actually on the table, on the ground there as well, on the scene.
Okay.
Yeah. If something was there and now it's gone, we've got a mark there that shows, it looks like, something made that mark, something made that burn or that chafe mark. And that matches, I wish you had the picture of the clips, the 2-finger clips that sometimes the military uses, that they use for putting on belts, and it would match that almost exactly, that pattern. And that, if it had shot up from there, I know we were talking about what the initial target was. That kind of a device, if it was, say, seated well into his belt and it fired upward, it would have been aiming straight at his heart. However, like I said, Charlie had a habit of slouching back and then slouching forward. And what that creates is a little bit of a gap in those kind of devices. They slip up and then the top leans out a bit. And I think that's when it went off. And it was, I think the original target was probably to go up under his ribs and into his heart, like you were saying. But with how it got loose, it misfired, or the trajectory went up toward his neck. Hit the necklace, went into his neck. Yeah, I mean, that's where I would put money on.
It's a tragedy regardless, no matter which way we look at, just to think that, and again, and this would be a question, I guess, Colin, for Mitch, would be, If you were to say with this type of technology to be able to carry out this type of a crime, what would be your number? Let's say top three suspects in this case here, and with the ability to carry it out.
You mean like culprits of it?
Who would have the capability, one, to carry out that type of an assassination? And if we're doing that when I say top three suspects, I'm not talking about individuals in this case here, Mitch. I'd be looking at organizations that are capable of carrying out this type of attack.
No, Stephen, I mean, you work for the CIA. You and I both know state actors would have this kind of stuff on the shelf. That would be one source of it. But this gets into, one of the reasons my background sort of helps me with this is I was an engineer. I was EOD. I dealt with explosives, making them, diffusing them. This gets into, rather than being a normalized rifle wound, this gets into experimental weapons. And, the question is, why do you use them? And that's where you have to consider, if he was assassinated by a conspiracy, you have to divide it into the prep, the event, and then also controlling the aftermath. And when you have something like this, and then also have something like the sound of a gun to cover it up, it gives you the ability, it gives a group like that the ability to control narratives on what evidence gets found, what doesn't. And so, yeah, you're starting to look at, it's either the state can prove that a 30-06 entered Charlie Kirk's neck and killed him and created the damage that we've seen, or it was some type of experimental weapon that involves a conspiracy. And I'm tending more towards that because I haven't seen anything that shows Tyler Robinson shot a rifle, that it was actually him, that it left the barrel, the bullet traveled across people's heads into Charlie's neck and created the exact damage that we see.
Not a chance.
There hasn't been any leg of that has been shown to be proven by the state or anybody else. So it's really strange.
And the gun that they found, by the way, they did not found that the ATF lied in the report. The ATF lied in the report. They say that that the spent shell casing was found at the scene, and it wasn't. Okay, number one, it wasn't a spent shell casing. It was I guess you could call it that maybe, but it was just an unfired casing. Or already fired shell casing. But it wasn't found at the scene. It was a bolt action rifle, and it was found in the rifle. And the rifle was found in the woods near a chicken coop off campus. So it was not, they can't link that rifle on. And another thing is the rifle wasn't fired either, because otherwise all the dogs, the bomb dogs, the drug dogs, they would have found it. They would have sensed it. They're trained to do that. They can go they can detect that stuff for miles. And you guys would probably, especially Mitch, with you being explosive, you would probably know more about that. But there's no way, if that gun was fired, and it was there, the dogs would have smelt it. They would have seen it. They would have found it. Correct?
Yeah. From what I've heard about those dogs, they were award-winning dogs. They've been through the area, I think, twice. Those type of dogs, as well as cadaver dogs, they can smell a scent from, sometimes miles away, to track something down. To be within, meters and not discover a rifle that's been recently fired, that would be extremely unlikely. Extremely.
One thing, let me just kind of share something too that I think is important. Because we always talk about, whether it be the ATF, the FBI, the different law enforcement agencies that have been involved in this, the hospitals, the autopsy, not the autopsy, whatever the case may be. When three-letter agencies like the CIA or MI6 or Mossad or whatever might be involved in something like this, especially if they're going across agencies to cover something up, the connections that they have are phenomenal. I know that the individual I mentioned to you earlier, I'll just say Jake, for example, when his plane crashed, and it didn't matter who it was, the doctors, the coroner's office, everything was taken into consideration long before that crash ever happened, to where every step of the way, right down to the aviation investigating it, there's somebody in every one of these agencies that they have control of, that they're able to make sure that only the information comes out the way they want it to come out, to where it'll be unfounded, to where you'll never get closure to that case there. And it's the same thing with Charlie, and quite frankly, even the disinformation that comes out. That's another aspect. They'll have people out there that they will swear up and down they're the experts. They'll say 100% Tyler did it. It's a 30-06, and we're talking about people with a great reputation. I know my uncle and we got in a little bit of a dispute over that because he was going with the mainstream narrative, and he did work with the FBI. Of course, he's long retired, like he always says. He says, "Me and you are both so old now." He said, "Everybody's retired that we know." Well, that's true, I guess, in regards to that. But the point being, though, is that at the same time, he fell for the narrative, the false narratives that were being put out about this case here. And this is part of it. It's just like JFK's assassination, all the different theories that came out later, all the different books, the different things that are leaked. CIA will leak things, partly true, partly a lie. Well, partly true and mostly a lie, whatever the case may be, to be able to keep anybody from ever really truly putting this information together. But with all this evidence, even like what you're putting out now, Colin, this is something that they don't like that type of information to get out because they have a fall guy, and they want to make sure that he's prosecuted. They want to make sure that, ultimately, if they can give him the death penalty, that will silence it from that side there. But if his defense team has any thought whatsoever for him, which that could be another compromise in itself, they would be working this evidence here in his favor, which I'd also be curious too to know if there's been any update on the bullet that allegedly, or the fragment of the bullet that did not match the gun itself, those type things there. But let me yield back there.
The as far as the disinformation, you're absolutely correct. We even had in the hearing 2 days ago that they had, the prosecutor got up there and was pretty much grandstanding for the public, making saying all these assumptions as fact. Completely, a lot of them were complete lies, but they were just, a lot of them were just assumptions. And I knew it. I said, that's what they're going to clip, and that's what they're going to run with. And sure enough, all the usual suspects, that's what they ran with. They clipped that section, and they're posting that everywhere, saying, "See, Tyler, he's guilty. He's guilty. He's guilty." And it's complete lies. Everything that guy said was just not true. And as far as the bullet fragment, the bullet fragment did not match. It was not. They could not match it with Tyler's rifle. They claim that they think it's from a .30 caliber round, which I still don't believe that. But even if it is, that doesn't mean that it's from Tyler's rifle. It could be from a huge number of rifles. It could be, probably could maybe not even a .30-06. So So that's pretty much the update with that. But they're running with that fact, and they're trying like TMZ is out there. All these disinformation agents are out there running around saying that they matched the bullet to Tyler's rifle when they didn't. It was inconclusive.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in here for a sec because there's a couple of things. I think what the public and I think what everybody really started triggering on when I look back on things is this habit of prosecutions, especially in high-profile cases like this. They start with a narrative, they nab their guy, and they're going to pin it to him. And they're cherry picking evidence, and they're excluding the rest of the bodies of evidence that contradict their story. And with a real investigation, you want to investigate, get as much information as possible, and then from that create a narrative that makes sense to a jury, which is us, the public. And what we're seeing is they already had what seems to, very quickly within hours, they had this narrative. They had this guy. It was going to be this way and done. And anybody else who even questions it, they've been very aggressive on the internet, paying shills and others to aggressively attack anyone who counters this narrative that was obviously not well constructed, and it's not based upon evidence that we already know is out there and refutes their narrative. So it creates this obvious distrust. Something's going on here, and then we see the court processes that are going on. They're not natural. That's not normal. This is not a normal case. This isn't. They're not letting him defend himself, properly. Along with the fact that the judge involved, this is the first case he's ever tried. There's so many exceptional things going on here to push this one narrative and to try to push this guy through. To include, Erica Kirk has an attorney that's basically going to be a second prosecutor. To try and push things through quicker before the defense even can analyze evidence. They want to destroy the last bit of, by the way, you're asking about the fragments, what I read. To be able to prove that it's even a bullet fragment, they want to destroy the last fragments that exist. They want to destroy the last bit of evidence in order to, try and arbitrarily say that this was a bullet.
And they don't even want to give the defense wants to at least look at it first. They want to take pictures of it. They want to watch the testing, and they've denied all of it. So they want to destroy the only last piece of evidence that they have of that fragment, and to try to do these tests, which are probably rigged anyway. But they want to destroy the last piece of evidence, and without the defense ever getting to see it whatsoever, to even prove that it's a real fragment, that it really came out of his neck, that it's really a bullet fragment at all, and not just a piece of metal or something, or shard from the microphone explosion.
They don't even want to provide the documented homework for how they came to their conclusions. You just have to accept, just take our word on it.
We learned they haven't even given the rifle. Sure. The defense hasn't even had access to the rifle yet at all. The ATF still has the rifle. They still have the matter of fact, the ATF hadn't even handed over the reports for the analysis for the fragment in the first place. They haven't even handed that over to them.
Yeah, so all of this goes into that after, like I said, if something like this were to be planned, you're going to have planning phases, an event, and then of course the control of the aftermath. And what we're witnessing is this constellation of controlled aftermath and false narratives that are going on. And I think with modern day, internet podcasting, independent investigators, and how quickly everybody is transferring and showing information, that's a new monster that they've been up against. This isn't the first type of case where, prosecutions have tried to railroad people. So I think this is a new monster, though, when it gets this much attention and you've got this many eyes on it. I think they're really struggling to try and figure out, how to control that. And that's sort of what we see, especially their reactions.
Yeah, I agree. They're making it up as they go. It seems like they're reacting. I really think they expected us all to just buy up the 30-06 narrative. But when Candace, when they revealed when she was able to get a hold of that back footage, I think that changed everything, because then they're like, oh crap, that's not going to work anymore.
Mhm.
And from that point on, I think it's like they've been playing catch up. They've been constantly correcting, changing the story, tweaking it here, there. They're making things up as they go to try to get ahead of it, because you're right. They haven't, they've never dealt with this before. They've never had, a public that's so insatiable for information, that's so involved in the case, that we're doing better work than the FBI is, Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about on this, and I know that there has been a lot of comparison even to JFK's assassination in this case here. But the thing is we have the overwhelming evidence of cell phones and people and eyewitnesses and things like that have really helped us, where we didn't have as much of that during Kennedy's assassination. But just to show you how much they work on covering those things up, there was a man by the name of Mr. Kelly who was on the Warren Commission, and I actually worked with him later in life. And back during the time when I was working with the CIA, I worked with him. He worked in an office where, as I would come in to do my reporting and things like that from out of the field, I would always bump into him. And but yet later in life, one of my colleagues told me, he says, well, you know what his job was, right? And I says, no. And he says, he was to cover your partner's ASS for what he did during the Kennedy assassination. And, we went into a long discussion about that later, but that's one of the reasons why I knew about all the narratives that were put out intentionally, the movies and everything that were made. And I think the only one that was ever close was the movie JFK. That was probably the most realistic one that they had. But coming back to Charlie Kirk, that's what we're dealing with now. They literally, every agency, every side is trying to cover this up, and I'm very concerned they're going to get away with it because, in my opinion, Israel is number one suspect in this. Now, I know how Israel is. It's just like the U.S. government. If you take Ukraine, for example, and we're trying to help Ukraine get an advantage over Russia. We'll end up, and I know that you guys probably, especially Mitch, would know this better than I would, but using the third parties instead of us actually pulling the trigger, so to speak, using contractors. So we have, deniability. That's exactly what's done on a regular basis. And so Israel, even though they may be the ones that are really the masterminds behind it, they're going to use third parties, just like the U.S. does, in order to carry this out. It's just like when we were arming Nicaraguans to overthrow their government. We're still using third parties and things like that to be able to carry that out. So just a thought there I want to throw in there.
And Candace proved it with the it was just a couple of weeks ago when she revealed that article where a whole bunch of Freemasons that were also legionnaires in the French infantry or whatever, that they actually just got arrested and busted for homicide for running a hit squad on behalf. They were trying to kill some Assad agents, and Candace revealed that on her show. And that proves everything that she's been saying. That proves the hit on her, how, everybody was trying to laugh it off like it wasn't real. No, it is real. That's what they do. That's how they operate. All these countries, they scratch each other's backs. You do our hits, we'll do your hits,
That's exactly what's going. With Candace, I'd already, and I guess it's safe to say now because we know some of the things that have transpired since then. But the Israelis wanted Candace dead, plain and simple, and that was after I got cussed out and called all kinds of names and everything. And you were once loved in the Knesset, now they hate your guts, and but get to my point. What about Candace? Don't worry, we got her number already. Her detail is compromised, and she's either going to have an accident, commit suicide, or one of those numbers there. They don't play games. They don't, and but the big, I guess the one thing good that Candace has got going for her is she is very well known. Of course, so is Charlie. Let's face it; it doesn't seem to matter whether you're well known or not, what your voice may be. The emboldenment that Israel has is at an all-time high. I mean, it's obvious. How do used to in the old days when Israel would do some kind of war or something like that, they could only go for a short period of time, and then they got drug in, and you couldn't keep fighting this war, whether it be Lebanon, Syria, whatever the case may be. It always had to be a little short go, and that was it. Now Gaza's been going on for almost 3 years, and there's no end in sight, and genocide an entire population practically. All the while we have the 6 to 8 hour stand down that's going on. So if they're willing to do that, knowing that the world is not going to do anything to stop them, what's Charlie Kirk or Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson? And my only hope is that we can always try to do everything we can to help reveal enough information to stop that from ever happening.
I think when information comes out that is credible, that we don't always operate above board, and like what you're saying is trading jobs, or the U.S. uses the CIA, State Department to tell, I don't know, Israel, and Israel then trades the job to France, and France's Foreign Legion will go ahead and go to South America to deal with something that we want. That kind of stuff does happen, and that goes through intel channels, agencies, and it's not that this shouldn't be breaking news information that this stuff has been going on. There's been books written about all this stuff. We've had congressional meetings about that kind of stuff in the past.
Absolutely.
So you have to sort of look at the motives, and I would say take Netanyahu for his word when he's getting up and saying that their number one priority was to take over media, to take over space, and that TikTok was their number one target. That means that media and messaging is extremely important to them with their operations and what they want, especially here in the United States, who's funding them. And for Charlie to, the president of the United States credited him as being the voice that helped get him elected more than any other. And for Charlie to have stepped away from the administration and get in an argument with Netanyahu, I mean, these are world leaders. I think that there's a lot of motivation there for wanting to not just silence Charlie Kirk, but take his platform. And it seems to be that that's what's happened.
That's exactly what they did. As Candace says, Charlie was the first casualty of the Iran war. And I fully believe that. There were two reasons why they wanted him gone. One, because he was standing in the way of the Iran war, and secondly, because he had his thumb on the largest group of Christian young people in America, and they need that support. Israel needs that support in order to survive, and they know that they're losing it. And if they lose Charlie, they lose that support, and they knew that. So those two reasons are why. But we only got a few minutes left because I know Steve has to jump off here in just a couple minutes. But real quick, I want to ask you one more quick question, Mitch. this story, I just want to get your take on this real quick, because this story, because I know you were with the 10th Mountain Division, right, or whatever, 110th,
Yeah.
whatever it's called. Let me pull this up real quick. Did you see Stu Peters?
Oh yeah, I comment on it.
Where they were replaced? Where the 110? What is it? Is it the 10th Mountain Division or the 110?
Yeah, so the JTF mission along the border was the 10th Mountain's responsibility for, on and off for 36 years. Since I was there, I was the first part of the first squad that was assigned. That was our first mission. Yeah, and then it seems that there's a suspicious timeline here of Joe Kent inquiring about the planes that were flew from Huachuca over the Charlie Kirk event. And, he also had other information apparently of foreign involvement, possibly, one that got them into that investigation. So when they asked for, what the federal resources are, and there's this plane that's flown from Fort Huachuca to right over the event and is doing surveillance type maneuvers, I'm pretty sure that they wanted to see what kind of information did they have from that plane. And that's when I think Kash Patel and them shut him down, and the president shut down the investigation. And following that, you all of a sudden have this, what is the AES explosion site, and which is tied to Fort Huachuca as well. And then you also have this chain of command.
It was the same day. Yeah, the AES explosion was on the same day that this chain of command happened, where they transferred it from the 10th Mountain Division to the one, whatever the hell it is, one something.
Yeah, and you have the SAM flight that goes from
the 101st Division. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a SAM flight that goes from DC to Fort Huachuca and back, and then crosses over the AES site low enough to probably taking pictures. Yeah, when you change a command in the Army, that's especially one that's been there for 36 years that they say has done a good job, and you sort of do it, quietly, just sort of have a company-sized formation, hand over a flag, say thanks very much, and then all of a sudden, what that does is every divisional person that was assigned to 10th Mountain, they leave, and they're now replaced by 101st Division soldiers. So if you're going to try and do
that's not normal, right? That's not something that normally happens. That they would, unless they were trying to cover something up, like Stu said. Is that your take on it?
The timing is a little bit suspicious, yeah, and it's units do change over, obviously, but they usually do it with presidential citations, some awards, some recognition. This got sort of done lickety split. 10th Mountain personnel are out of there, and what that does, right after somebody's trying to investigate something from Fort Huachuca, now you don't have the personnel. Let's say if an investigation is coming, eventually, you don't have the personnel that are still there, that were there during these events that they want to inspect about. They're going to have to go hunt them down all over the place. And now with two military actions and war in Iraq, trying to find.
And then with
it'll be pretty impossible.
Yeah, the other thing is they had them sign a 10-year NDA or whatever. That's unusual. Or 20, is it 10 or 20 years? I think it might have been 20 years actually. But that's super unusual in my opinion. You would know better because you've been in the military, but that definitely sounds unusual to me.
Yeah, NDAs aren't necessarily in special forces, military intelligence, classified stuff. They're not completely unusual. So I don't know. Given the sensitivity of this event and the interest in investigating it, yeah, I'm sure that they crack down on the troops really quick.
Yeah, that can mess up your retirement as well. So And I know for us, we had 30 years, you know, so I didn't breathe a word to anybody. And I guess it was probably 33 or 34 years after the fact that I began to finally start talking about it. And even then, very cautious. I haven't ever really disclosed everything, mainly because when I was talking to my uncle about it one day about being a whistleblower, and he says, "Well, nice knowing you, son." Thanks a lot, Uncle Wes. Thanks a lot. He says, "Well, son," he said, "listen, there's some families that you would affect that are in power that are not going to like what you got to say very much. So," he said, "just keep that in mind." He says, "and they normally, you know how it goes, they start with your family and work their way backwards until they get to you last."
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, they will go after family members. They'll coerce them. They'll turn them on you. And I've experienced that. I think you guys have all now witnessed how that played out. Um, yeah, I think there at some point we need to have an investigation into these kind of operations that are happening right here on our own U.S. soil, because it shouldn't be. This, and you're right with whistleblowers. All you have to do is take a look at this, Boeing or any of the guys that came back whistleblowing about the child. Boy, I don't want to say too many. I don't want to do the buzzwords, but there was some stuff going on in the camps over there in Afghanistan that our troops weren't uh, didn't like, and they tried to do something about it, and then they came back as whistleblowers, and their lives were destroyed. Um, they were they were silenced about all sorts of things. The guy who special forces guy who came out about Abu Ghraib and what was going on there, his life, yeah, it was destroyed similarly back here at home. And it's really sad to watch uh, what goes on with all of this. So I think my brake lines are fine, by the way. I'm not planning on going anywhere. I'm not going to be skydiving anytime soon. I'm in a great relationship. I've got plans for the future. Um, you know, uh, I think it's been weird that since what December, since I talked to Candace Owens, that's become a trend um, across the entire internet with people reporting on any of this, is that they have to give these disclosures to say, hey, if something happens to me, I didn't commit suicide. I've never seen that before in our history. Why are we so afraid? Why are we so afraid of our own government? And that needs to change.
Boy, isn't that the truth? That is so true, Mitch, because it is. We have been so compromised in our government, and I think that well, let me just say this: I am so happy to see people like Candace and Tucker Carlson, and even Carrie Prejean Bowler having the courage to come out and call out AIPAC in America and how our nation, our whole political system is compromised in this country. It started off just, seemingly innocently. Oh, we want to support Israel. Israel's a nation now, things like that. But then when you go to really digging into all of this and you find out people like we had the former what was his name? Yaakov Sharit. His father was the second prime minister of Israel at 92 years old. He's 99 now. He's still great, brilliant man. He's very, very cognizant. But at 92, he does an interview with Haaretz, and he says, I have been supporting a criminal state. And he goes into the 1948 war and how that we basically colonized the area. It wasn't a war of independence. And I know friends of mine that were in the Holocaust. The movie Defiance was made after Tuvia Bielski. His son Michael was a very close friend of mine, and sharing about how his father refused to be part of the 48 war because they wanted to kill Jews that would even think about taking Jerusalem because there was a division there. But now it's here in our country, and I think sadly it has a lot to do with the Schofield theology that got brought into all of this. And of course, I do understand the Hebrew language, so I do a lot of digging in that, trying to help guide back into the right direction. Like Tucker was having, who was it? It was Ted Cruz on, and even Mike Huckabee saying, whoever blesses Israel, God will bless. Whoever curses it, God will curse. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, you don't even have to read Hebrew to know it doesn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but this is what got us into that ideology, and unfortunately, our entire system is compromised. Charlie seemed to be he was getting the picture, even though he was very avid supporter of Israel. I get that. It took me at least a year and a half, 2 years to come out myself. I used to go to the Knesset. I was offered my citizenship, even though I'm a Christian. Because of my Jewish family, they said, Steve, look, we'll just bypass it all and give you your family citizenship. I lived in Israel, but now I look back on it all, and it's so sad to see what I was supporting has just really turned this world upside down. And now we see a young man like Charlie Kirk. They had to silence him, and it's obvious why. He affected greatly the younger generation
Mm-hmm.
in the political arena, and they could not have him turn on Israel, even if it's not fully, but just start challenging that narrative. And so they're going to shut him up as a result of that. And if they did it to Charlie, this is why, Candace or Tucker, whether they try to ruin them financially or whether they try to ruin their reputation, set them up. And believe me, I'm sure the honey traps for Tucker is like, well, you would know as well on that, Mitch. You know how that goes there.
Mm-hmm.
They will definitely set those for you. I get it I get the crazy. I show my wife all the time. I'm like, can you believe? I'm like, how many women have my phone number? Where did this come from? Block, delete, block, delete, block, delete. It's everywhere. So they're. I'll shut up, but I tell you, it's crazy what we're living in right now.
Yeah. No, it's been a pleasure sitting here talking with both of you. And no, I think everybody. The only reason like Candace Owens and Tucker have such a large audience is because the public is waking up. So I think there is hope. And yeah, we have to. I think we have to realize our fear when we're all like, having to give disclaimers that we're not going to commit suicide. I think that's a real sign that we've all been gaslit for a very long time. I think we have generations of kids now that have. I've spoken to many of them, and they're just tired of being lied to. They've been lied to their whole life. Everything is false. Everything is fake, and they want something real. And yeah, we're in this very dangerous time, and here we are. We're going to wars to avoid releasing Epstein files because there's a lot of people that believe that, and there's a lot of good reason to believe that that's true.
There's a lot of truth in that, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's it's very scary, and we need to vote better.
I've tried to get one young lady, actually two young women, but one specifically that has remained silent, was paid off to be silent. Just so happens to be that a friend of mine knows her, and she's made accusations that she was 14 years old when she was on Epstein Island. But her hatred was more for Ghislaine Maxwell for, tricking them into believing that they were going to be someone only to take them out to this island. And there's people in power right now that she accuses of being the person that did this to her.
Yeah, there's and it's not that it's not credible. I mean, these are FBI files that they've all collected on this stuff. It's not it's not necessarily hearsay to say that you can just blow it off. It deserves proper investigation. We have, 800,000 kids going disappearing in this country every single year.
It's a huge problem.
And we've got so much so that an Epstein Island can exist, and they can be, performing hunts and whatnot there, and we've got no investigation. There's nobody going to jail for that. That something's wrong. Something's wrong all the way. Something's rotten, really deeply rotten.
Exactly. And we got, they won't even hand over all the files. They're breaking the law. Congress has mandated them to release all the files. They still have not released all the files. And even the ones they released, they broke the law on them as well, because they were only supposed to redact victim names. That's it. And what did they do? They redacted all the predators' names and all Trump's name and all Trump's friends' names and all, the elite people. Like, they redacted anything that would incriminate them, and that completely against what the law was, what they passed.
I'll tell you something that I was very careful about how I spoke about this when it was given to me, but my Iranian contact, who I've known for years, he was supportive of his country's leaders being overthrown until it actually happened. And then he said his own family was being killed in the process, and then he was against it. But all the years that he and I have collaborated and breaking information that goes on in the Middle East, from General Soleimani, his movements, his meetings, etc. I don't think I've ever had a single time that he wasn't exact spot on in accuracy. And he calls me not long ago, and we were having a discussion, and he says, Steve, he said, I've never steered you wrong. I've never, that. He said, never intentionally. I've never told you anything that was not true. And he says, what I'm going to tell you, he said, there's no way for me to prove this. So I'll even say now, allegedly, to make this point here. He said, but I have just received the information. The reason why Trump went to war was, and I'll say this, Pete Hegseth and J.D. Vance would know if this is true or not, because they were in the room with Netanyahu and Donald Trump when Netanyahu allegedly asked those two men to leave the room. Allegedly, he's got some information that's so damning about what the Iranians did to the civilians that it was too gruesome for them to look at. Now, these are supposed to be combat veterans, and it's too gruesome for them to look at. But when he leaves, he plays a video for the president, and now the president's convinced to go to war. Now, from what I was told, it had nothing to do with what happened to the civilians. It had everything to do with that island off the coast of Florida.
Yeah.
So there
I
again,
believe it.
no way to prove it. There's no way to prove it. Like I said, the only two that would know if that type of event happened would be Pete and J.D. Vance, because J.D. Vance did not want to go to war against Iran. He was against it. And if you really wanted to convince the man to go to war because you have such graphic footage of what they were doing to the civilians, and of course he told me, he said it is true. The RIGC, they slaughtered them. He said, of course, then again, it was Mossad to give them the weapons to shoot at the police and things like that. And it's what kind of stirred the entire thing up in the first place, so he was honest about it. And by the way, I'll say something here too that I've not said too much on my own channel, which this is aired on my channel right now. Mojtaba is dead. He's been dead for a while. The Iranians are using Mojtaba because it really rallied the younger generation when he took his father's place. He was in the same bombing that his father was in. It killed his wife, killed his son. The president of Iran was there. He survived because there's a huge underground compound, but he did survive. Mojtaba was severely injured. He was taken into Russia. They did surgery on him. When he came back, the U.S. didn't even know they killed him. He was caught up in an airstrike and he was killed. And they put another man in his place. I know who the other guy is, but I'm like, all they do is kill everybody. And I'm not for any Muslim clerics or anything like that. But I'm like,
don't give them any intel.
Right. I don't want to be the guy that causes this guy to end up dying too.
Yeah.
And of course, I was told that, he's a moderate. He's a kind old man, and he said, he probably would do some good, But nonetheless, so they want the people to believe that Muyataba is the one that's in power when he's not. They did kill him in that strike. A strike that they were unaware that they killed him in, which is kind of unusual for them not to know. But I'm assuming they know they took him into Russia for the surgery, but who knows about all that. But and this is completely off subject there, but I thought I'd throw that in there because this is what we're facing right now. All this crazy insanity to do these wars and things like that, and of course Charlie. He came right, just like Tucker as well. Don't go to war with Iran. What are we going to war with Iran for? When are we going to get up? But here's a weird thing. And Mitch, this is something I'd be curious if you know anything about this as well. I had heard years ago from a good friend of mine that was, he had been worked for JSOC, and he said to me, he said when we go to war with Iran, he said the objective is to drive us out of the Middle East. He said, and ultimately that's what's going to happen. A friend of mine with Mossad said that, because I was really giving China hell one day, and he says, you need to stop and back off of China. He said, we're done with America. China will be our new military power that we use to govern this world. Now, who knows?
They will be. Absolutely.
It's crazy. But Mitch, have you heard of any of these type things?
No, I've been out for so long. I try to remain a little bit disconnected from my peers. They've been running around doing contracts and stuff, so I try not to be honest with you. But there is definitely you don't have to be a global war and power expert to realize there's some power movement going on between China, Russia, Iran, and us and Israel. There's some big there's some big boulders moving around, and we're on the precipice of something, and hopefully some of the minds that are involved can figure out how to calm it down and bring the heat down, bring us back to some stability.
I sure hope so as well. That would really be great. So,
yeah.
What do you guys think of them trying to soft launch Erica Kirk as the for 2028 Kirk Vance? They're trying to soft launch her campaign at the Build the Red Wall event.
If that happens, JD would be divorced. What else? I mean, I don't know. Oh, yeah. Well, let me put it this way here. It'd probably be a sure. Well, I don't know. I would want to say that they would not get elected, but you never know nowadays. I mean, normally, as the old saying goes, we know who's going to be the president. Normally, at least a decade in advance.
Not unless they cheat.
Yeah. So Trump. They knew Trump was going to be president. I think it was in, what was it, 1999 or 1992? I forget what year they knew he was going to be president. And he was supposed to run 2 terms consecutively, but that didn't go so well. But maybe it was because they weren't really, I don't know what the deal is on that. Supposedly this all began back at the time with Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan wasn't supposed to be president. But when they saw that he was going to get in, that became a big problem. And so they, from what I was told, that they came to him and they said, look, we know that you're going to most likely win the election. And you're going to take George H.W. Bush to be your vice president. He says, I don't want George H.W. Bush to be my vice president. And so they told him, they said, well, then you'll have a very short lifespan. Figure that one out, right?
Yeah.
They're all puppets.
We've lived during some interesting times, haven't we, Stephen? We've seen a lot.
They have. Definitely get my phone number from Colin.
I will. Yeah, I'll reach out to you tonight.
And I will not. I promise I will not commit suicide either.
Yeah. Check your brake lines. Everybody got air in their tires.
I told you they've been tracking me. I know for a fact they've been tracking me. I've seen cars tailing me. I've seen the Wi-Fi. I know they're tracking me because I see a Wi-Fi pop up near me when I'm not near anybody else's Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you're on a big piece of property.
I've been taking some precautions, about that. You got to check, got to be careful. I mean, I'm not scared to die by any means, but you gotta be careful. You got to take precautions, and luckily Steve gave me some tips on that, so I've been taking his advice on some of that.
It's always wise to be aware of your surroundings and never keep a routine.
Exactly.
So
very good advice.
One more thing. I guess this is something that I released back when it first came out, back I think September, not long after the actual assassination. But this is that projectile that we saw between Charlie's legs. Remember that we talked about this at one point, Steve?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I'll just replay it again real quick so people can remind them real quick before we talk about it.
Yeah, it's hard to say, I mean, could have just been something falling. Could it have been? I mean, or could have been. The biggest problem we had that day was a lot of bugs, and it just is so easy for something like that to appear. But even like what you're showing there, that was because when I looked at the bulge in his neck and I was trying to figure a trajectory, it seemed to be closer to fit that particular spot there. But now that you have the stomach, it's clearly could be the other way. And the other thing is too, you can't tell from the way the spine bulges there in his neck from that side view angle and know for certain whether where that impact was to his spinal cord when it hit there. It's just not possible. You don't know if it's upper, lower, or whatever. So that all changes trajectory. And just like what Mitch had brought out earlier, depending on how he was slouched at the time, he was leaning back. Obviously, he was leaning back, which would be more consistent with that type. And then too, fragmentation can ricochet inside the body, just depending on what it hits when it goes in. Things like that. I mean, I've seen a few people get shot before. Always, though, normally with some pretty nasty bullets, but did a lot of damage. But anyway, I don't know.
The telling thing though is
hold on a second. Here's the thing though. When I first looked at this, when we first looked at it, we thought that this was going downward.
Yeah.
Because we remember we had found the two projectiles behind him. We caught them on frame behind him. And we thought that it was going downward. It was, I guess, in line with that, or maybe, from the one behind. Remember, we saw the one that bounced off looked like a shell casing bouncing off the tent or whatever.
Right.
But looking at it now, I actually believe that it's going upward, not downward. And the reason I say that, I mean, you only see it on one frame, so it's hard to really. Two frames kind of. You got there, and there, so you got two frames. But the reason that I say that is, if you look, this is before it appears before his shirt moves. See, his shirt hasn't moved yet. Once, boom, that's when the shirt starts to move right there. Because you can see it right up at where the white arrow is. You can see where his shirt starts to move. You see that?
Yeah.
So that's the only thing that kind of gets me. I'm not really sure what this is. It's clearly not under his shirt. It's not from the explosion. And I know the explosion, the mic pack explosion, that is what actually killed Charlie. But at the same time, we also know that there was a high-powered rifle fired because of a couple things. Because of the there's a sonic. We see the sonic. The people thought was a muzzle flash that we originally thought was a muzzle flash in the window, but that was not a muzzle flash. It ended up being the sonic. I forget what it's called, but it's where it goes from supersonic to subsonic. It creates like a cone around the bullet, and that's actually what we saw with that. And then you also, John Bray, when he did the audio, he just did an audio analysis. I might have that pulled up. Actually, no, I don't have it pulled up. Sorry. I texted it to you. You could pull it up if you want. But when John Bray did the audio analysis, that proved that there were multiple explosions. When he did, you can see, because he laid out the audio track, and you can see that there are actually 3 separate bangs there. You got the crack, you got the boom, and then there's another thing. And they're all in very, very short succession, like almost right on top of each other. But when you spread it out like he did, you can see them individually. So there was definitely something else that happened, and that's why there's so much confusion. That's why some people thought it was a gunshot, some people thought it was explosion, because there were actually multiple things going on at the time. And Steve and I have been saying there were multiple things going on from day one. And I still think this is part of something. I'm just not sure what it is. I just wanted to kind of get your guys' idea, if you had any idea maybe what this could be, because it looks like it's coming down from underneath of the table where Charlie is, and going
Yeah,
up.
I'm gonna have to get that video and I'll look it over. It's interesting. It seems that something is traveling in the direction of what we think is the device exploding and sending a projectile. But
the only thing is, though, too, Mitch, is you got to. What I'd be curious to know is how many frames is there, because it shouldn't be there no more than one frame. Actually, in reality, not with a bullet anyway.
No, that's all it really shows is just one frame.
Okay. So everything's crazy, as I know that, and but seeing the bruise on his stomach or whatever that is, it's like he got smacked like crap. That's just too crazy. That is just absolutely crazy, right?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, playing devil's advocate, if you want to explain it away that that's just blood smear from somebody's fingers. Well, what part of trauma medicine for a neck wound do you stuff your fingers down the crotch of a patient?
Yeah.
It makes no sense,
Oh, it's definitely not blood. There's no way that's blood. It's 100% that's not blood.
Well, the other point is, the other point too is the symmetrics. You're pretty straight line across the top.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, who knows? I mean, it's just it does seem to be, though, more plausible, especially given some of the information we've been looking at. So everything seems to be centered around him, though, regardless of which way we go. So anyway,
it's far more plausible than a 30-06, far more plausible than the Rode microphone. Yeah. And we know that there was a device there, and now it's gone. So yeah, I think whatever people are stuffing in their pockets, that was always weird. Everybody caught that right away. It's just really, it's a very strange incident, and I didn't see anybody that made any real attempts to save Charlie's life. They had 2 EMTs back there. Nobody even bothered to grab their bags and all their gauze tissue or anything like that.
Left them standing on the side of the road.
That's not true. The EMTs were there, and they tried to render aid, and Charlie's team would not let them render aid.
That's what he was saying. That's what he was
Yeah,
saying.
Yeah, that's the truth, because I'm the one that broke the story on that.
Right.
And also, we even have video of where Charlie's, when they were taking him into the SUV and loading him in the SUV, the medics tried to go with him, and they said
Right.
no. And then the medics tried to give them the bag and said, okay, well, here, just take the bag then. You guys do it. And they ignored them. They wouldn't even take the bag from them.
Yeah. You don't do stuff like that.
Mm-mm.
Not when you've got a life situation, you're trying to save someone's life.
No, they didn't want him to live. That's the thing. They didn't want him to live.
Well, I mean, these guys are all claimed to be security guys that are cross-trained with emergency, medicine. I think somebody was an EMT. They didn't do anything that matches basic protocol to want to save somebody from that type of wound, or they didn't do anything that reflects, trauma protocol at all. Even the way that they laid him into the van, wound down, rather than sitting him up with, leaning to his right, probably would have been ideal for, stopping bleeding, or at least trying to mitigate it a bit. But to lay him down with wound down, feet poking out the door, that's the exact opposite of what yeah, it didn't make any sense.
That's an excellent point.
Hmm.
And then we got
who killed Yitzhak Rabin? I remember Barry Chamish telling me, he said after he got in the car, he was still alive, and they shot him in the car as well.
Well, see, that's the thing, is there's another photo. I don't know if I have it to pull up here, but there's another photo where you can see the seatbelt soaked in blood, but it's not just like where, it's not like blood transfer. It's not like his hand touched it, but it's down the whole, it's wrapped on the edge of the whole thing. Like maybe they wrapped it around his neck to try to finish the job or something. Like, and that's what it looks like. I'm gonna see if I can find it real quick and pull it up. I think I got it in here. You guys go ahead and keep talking while I'm looking
I don't think Charlie was going to survive that wound. Not the amount of blood he lost and everything. I mean, you can lose a lot of blood. You can lose a pint and still survive it, But that's I've seen some pretty gross things in life, and but his whole, the way it's almost as if, I think one doctor had brought out that it, from the way he clutched his fist like that was a lower brainstem impact. Mm-hmm. So I can imagine it just hitting and just sliding right on up. So I'm sure, from that point there wasn't much to be able to salvage regardless. But even so, like you said, just the basic protocols. I remember back when I first did these type first aid things, is so dadgum long ago. We didn't do a lot of things you do today, but if you had a severed artery, we'd make an attempt to hold the artery together, until you get them to a hospital. So,
and that's the other thing, is they didn't, when he went down or whatever, they didn't try to do any kind of wound control. They didn't try to stop the bleeding or nothing. They just picked him up and started carrying him.
Yeah, should have. The main thing would have been to triage him right there on the spot, and then move.
Yeah, I mean, you think you would make sure he's stabilized before you try to move him,
Yeah. Now, apparently, this was also after they made an attempt to clean up, even the seatbelt that you have there, and that kind of a stain. That's a saturation stain. That's wet blood. That's not like smear. That's not coagulated or partially coagulated blood. That's direct soak, and it's running down. The weird thing I saw in it, because it does seem to match the wound, that round thick part there. I
agree.
That to have been in contact with the wound and blood that would have saturated it, it's a little bit strange, because because that's the seat in front of him. So you would have had to have grabbed that, wrapped that around the back of his head, and then back around his neck. Maybe devil's advocate, maybe it's a makeshift way that they were trying to, I don't know, tourniquet or
cover up the wound. Yeah, do the tourniquet. Make sure you don't get no blood to your head, buddy.
I don't know.
That's what some people were saying, but that would be a horrible thing to do. I mean, if you have a wound to the head, you don't want to cut the circulation off to your head,
No, there's no.
Could be though for compression. I mean, like you said,
maybe for compression.
Could be compression.
But you'd have to. It means that seatbelt was wrapped around the back of his head and then back under, for it to have this kind of a drip display that goes from the wound that way. That means that belt may have been around his neck, and that's very
concerning.
That's peculiar. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that in any kind of trauma protocol at all.
Aye.
It's
Well,
weird.
Colin, hey brother, I've certainly appreciated being on with you guys tonight, though, for sure. And
it's an honor.
Yeah, it's been a great show. Thank you for joining me, both you guys. We pretty much talk what we want to talk anyway. The rest of the time we were kind of just bullshitting anyway. So, yeah, we'll do it again sometime. I appreciate both you guys coming on.
absolutely.
Everybody make sure you follow both these guys, and subscribe. You can follow Steve. He goes by Stephen Denoon on X. You can follow him there. You can also follow him. He has a YouTube channel at Israeli News Live. You can follow him there. Also follow Mitch Snow here. You can follow him at Justice for Great 8, which is
Great
Justice
Nate.
for, Great 8 Nate. Sorry, Justice for Great 8 Nate, which is at Justice, then the letter 4, GR8, and then Nate. So follow. Yep. So follow both these guys. They're out here. They're doing good work. Good friends of mine. And yeah, you guys got any last words or anything?
No, it's an absolute honor meeting Stephen and being on your show there, Colin. Thank you so much.
Likewise, so much. We appreciate you, Colin, tremendously, and so good to meet you as well, Mitch. So, Colin, if you would send me his link there too, and that way I can get connected over there with him. By the way, for those that wonder about Stephen Denoon, when I first wrote books about 12, 13, maybe 15 years ago, I wrote under the pen name of Denoon. I don't know why I decided to do that. Stupidity, who knows? But anyway, that's when I was a good Zionist. So first 2 books I ever wrote are under that pen name. And so, but Benoon is my actual name. Maybe this next book I'll write, we're using my real name instead of my pen name.
All right.
Guys,
well,
thank you so much.
It's also, like I said, pleasure. It's always a pleasure streaming with you, Steve. It's a pleasure actually seeing you face to face and having you on the channel as well, Mitch. So thank you very much for coming on. And I think it was a good show. So I appreciate it. Thank you all for watching us, and we will see you on the next one.
That was good.